Hello there, welcome to Somatic Self Healers. My name is Leah McQuaid. I'm so excited that you're here in this community that we're building. We come together and we work through our survival response so that you can begin to embody the things that you want in life. Embody more calmness, more peace, more joy. So today we're going to talk about the liver. We're going to work the right side of the solar plexus. So in each one of our Somatic Self Healers sessions, each one of these episodes, we talk about, for the first maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, we talk a little bit about our theme. And then we get into a biofield tuning session using tuning forks in your bioelectrical field. And so we're going to work the right side of your solar plexus where the liver sits. So we're going to talk about the liver a little bit first and why it's important to our overall health and in particular the health of our nervous system. So first, why is the liver important? So it purifies our blood. And it allows our blood to have iron. So when we have iron in our blood, it keeps us strong, it keeps the cells functioning. So the liver filters all the time. So it's filtering our blood all the time. So when our livers are efficient and they're working well and they're filtering our blood, we have life force, we have energy. The opposite can also be true. So when we're experiencing stagnation in the liver, we can have sluggishness, we can feel heavy. And so the capillaries in our blood really filter and feed everything, right? So the liver is just so important to our overall health. And I want to talk a little bit now about hormones because the liver processes excess hormones, including cortisol and adrenaline. So cortisol and adrenaline are our stress hormones. So here's the link with our nervous system and the stress response. Because if we're not able to metabolize adrenaline and cortisol, we're gonna have a heightened, more activated state. So this is also another really important reason to start paying attention to our liver health. And if our liver is stagnant, not filtering our blood, not processing the hormones, we're gonna be irritable, we're gonna be more overwhelmed, we're gonna be easier to react, we're gonna have more of anger showing up, and we're going to talk more about anger because that sits in the right side of our solar plexus in biofield tuning. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm sure that'll come up during our session. So our liver really affects our capacity to process stress, right? To process the adrenaline and the cortisol. And you've heard me say before, if you have been following along in my work, it's not about never having a response to stress or never being activated, right? We live in reality. We all have the reality of being human, and we will have stressful experiences in our lives. So the more we can pay attention to these different aspects in our lives and support ourselves so that we can move through the stress rather than it taking us over and causing us to collapse or shut down or freeze, right? The better we'll be able to have a nervous system that's adaptable and flexible. So the liver plays a really big role in our ability to metabolize these stress responses. So the other thing I want to talk about is our emotions and how our emotions are also connected to our hormones. So if our livers are impaired, when we have an experience of an emotion, right, we're gonna have a harder time moving through those emotions if our liver is in a state of stagnation, right? Because those hormones, right, are associated with emotional responses. And I want to just mention a little bit about the importance of moving through. When I talk about moving through emotions, what I'm speaking to is like a surfer riding a wave. So the emotion comes up and we can develop the skill of feeling that emotion and letting that emotion amplify and be there, and then riding that wave of emotion. Typically after about 60 to 90 seconds of riding that wave, of letting that intense emotion be there, it'll start to subside, right? It won't be as intense, and we won't have to repress or suppress the emotion. And so that's something I just wanted to mention here as we're working through this idea of emotion, right? But going back to the liver, when our liver is filtering really well, when our liver is processing the toxins in our blood and letting the hormones be metabolized, right? It's easier to let those emotions move through us, right? And those emotions and those hormones can circulate in the blood, right? And this is important too for women during menstrual years. Oftentimes PMS can be the estrogen that's built up in our blood and the liver not being able to process that extra estrogen. So then it comes out as reactivity, as more emotional states, right? Because the extra estrogen is backed up in the liver, right? So liver health is so important for everybody in all areas of life, man or woman, whether you're menstruating or not menstruating. It's important because we all have the stress hormones, and in particular women who are in the menstruating years. And when you go through that time, that bleeding, that luteal phase, it's even more important to pay attention to our liver health. Okay, so what can we do about our liver and support our liver? And we all know about alcohol, right? There's no surprise there that alcohol backs up the liver, creates this stagnicity, but also refined carbs and sugars. So I'm going to keep talking about this as we go through the healing session. I'm going to go ahead and just start the tuning forks on the right side of the solar plexus. Right? So if you're not familiar with the solar plexus, above the belly button, right up to about the rib cage. And we're gonna work this right side where the liver is. And it sits underneath the rib cage there on the right side, just so you know, so you can bring your attention and your awareness to that place. And as I continue to talk about what we can do, if you've been following along my work, you know that I highly recommend and encourage some discharge, some release, breath, movement, and sound as a way to just bring some activation in your system down, maybe some breath, maybe some heel drops, my favorite heel drops, maybe some twists. So we're not gonna go into a lot of that if you've been following along. You know about the discharge. You can also find a lot of my other resources on Insight Timer when I speak about release and let go practices. But take your time. Maybe as I continue talking here, you do a little bit of that work, right? That release and let go work. And when you're ready, you're more than welcome to just allow yourself to settle in. But I'm gonna go ahead and start on that right side. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about what you can do to support your liver, right? So we talked about refined carbs and sugar. So 1 to 2 teaspoons or 4 to 8 grams is what your body of sugar is what your body can process at one time. So watching your sugar intake, right? Because what happens if your body is processing more than 4 to 8 grams at a time, what happens is that your body says, oh, hold on, too much, and it creates a stress response. So adrenaline gets activated in your bloodstream. And so what essentially you're doing is creating a stress response in your body, right? So a lot of reasons to watch sugar and refined carbs, right? Other things that you can do to support your liver: burdock and dandelion root, milk thistle strengthens the liver. You can finish your meal, your last meal of the day, about 3 or 4 hours before you go to bed. So I love this, and this has really helped me. So I have a condition where I actually have too much iron in my blood. So I have used a lot of these some of this advice. And I think one of the biggest pieces of advice that has helped me is eating my last meal about 3 or 4 hours before I go to bed. Because what this does is it helps your liver kind of regenerate in the middle of the night, right? So it's not processing food when you're sleeping, it can regenerate, right? The other one that's been really, really helpful for me, and I'm just gonna pause a minute, because I'm feeling just a little bit of fear coming through in the outer edge of our field here. So take a nice big deep breath, blow it out. Yeah, so I'm just gonna pause for just a moment. So I'll come back to a few more pieces of the advice here. But first I just wanna pause. There's quite a bit coming up. So the right side of the biofield is related to anger, right? And also father. So what's coming through here is just that fear of father's anger, actually. So we're just gonna pause. This can be really tender. So when we work in the outer edge of the field, that's early, either generational, ancestral, or early on in our life, birth, 1. I'm at about maybe 1 or 2 in the timeline. So there's just this kind of fear of father. So this is really tender. I just want to give some time to this. Nice big deep breath. Really blow it out. I want you to really blow it out. Yeah. And I want you to keep doing some of that discharge, right? So I want you to move your body, shake out your arms or your legs. This is quite heavy here. That's it. And I'm just going to wait a moment until some of that subsides a little bit. Lots of stress in the body and in the system early on in your life. And I want you to place your hand over your liver. So right here, right side of the rib cage there, you can kind of place your fingers a little under the rib cage. I want you to take some deep breaths. Yeah, beautiful. Softening some of that fear. I want you to really bring your awareness to that part of your body. Let your hands soften that part of your body. Nice big deep breaths. I want you to soften your shoulders, soften your glutes. Yeah, that's it. And just let the sound of the fork, the sound of my voice, just let it soften your body. Starting to deepen your breath. In and out through the nose. If you need to, you can breathe out of the mouth. That's okay. If you need to continue with those sort of forceful, not forceful in a controlling way, but just allowing your breath to be conscious on the exhale, that's okay. Or you can breathe in and out through your nose. A lot came up right away. Early on, so we're just gonna honor that. Yeah, that's it. Beginning to let your body relax, keeping your hands somewhere on your body. And you might even grab a pillow if you'd like. If you're feeling lots of activation still, maybe you grab a pillow. This can be a lot. It's just a lot coming up. So if you'd like, if you're somewhere with a pillow, maybe you grab a pillow and squeeze the pillow. There's a little bit of freeze coming up. So squeezing that pillow. Yeah. That's it, my friends. Doing a great job of just being with yourself. A lot of this work is just learning how to be with yourself and how you are. Also learning how to receive your own medicine. So receiving your breath in your body. Receiving the sound of the fork. And for some of you, anger is gonna rise to the surface, resentment, frustration. For some of you, you're gonna want to have a cathartic release. Maybe you squeeze the pillow, maybe you scream or yell into the pillow, holding space for that to happen for you. Some of you might want to use that pillow, making fists and hitting the pillow. All of that is welcome as a way to cathartically move the anger, move the resentment, move the frustration. Yeah, that's it. And so when you hear me breathe, those deep breaths, it's how I move the intense energy for you all. So you can also move that intense energy through the breath as well. That's it. Yeah. Holding a lot of stress in those livers. So just allowing the liver to process and to metabolize right here, right now. Some of that cortisol, that adrenaline. Some of you might need to have a lot of movement. Coming back to the release, the let go, the discharge, the cathartic release. So moving of your voice through your voice, right? The moving of energy through your voice. Screaming into that pillow, all of that's welcome. Having that temper tantrum like a child. All of that is welcome, my friends. We just metabolize that anger, that resentment, that stress right here, right now. Through your body, through your breath. Of course, doing this with respect to your body. Yeah, not pushing beyond your capacity. And some of you, this may not resonate. Some of you might need smaller movements, less dynamic movements. Just squeezing that pillow is enough for some of you. Yeah. That's it. Wherever you are on that spectrum of moving, release, letting go of that anger, that resentment, that frustration is perfect. Just keep following how your body wants to release it. I trust that you know what's best for your body. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Always coming back to the sound of the fork, the sound of my voice. Coming back to the breath, the movement, the sound, receiving your own breath, movement, and sound. Coming back to the support underneath you, supporting your head. Supporting your bottom, so maybe you are standing or sitting for the release. Now just taking a moment to feel supported, hands on your heart. Always knowing you can pause this recording if you're still in a process of riding that wave of anger, of release. If you're still in that temper tantrum, by the way, that's not me being patronizing. The temper tantrum technique can be really helpful. Help us ride that wave and help us move that intense energy that is anger, rage, frustration, resentment. So it's like a child having a temper tantrum, and if you let them have their temper tantrum, after a minute, 2 minutes, they stop, they soothe themselves, or we as adults help them soothe, and then they're back to normal. That's what I mean by a temper tantrum and that technique, right? And if you notice they might kick their legs, stomp their feet, bang their fists, all of that is welcome. If you're still in that process, nothing wrong with that. And the important thing after this process is to give yourself some grace, some love. So maybe you're there now and you want to hug yourself, hold yourself. Maybe you rock side to side. And you tell yourself, oh, sweetheart, good job. I know that was hard. Yeah, that's it. You might put your hands on your heart, supporting your heart. Feeling your breath in your body. Sighing it out. Yeah, that's it. Doing a great job being with yourself. Riding that wave. That's it. There's a little bit of fear coming in again. I'm just going to sit with that for a moment. Bring some coherence to that fear. can feel my body getting warm. All that heat from the anger, the rage, right? I can feel that. So you might be noticing your body temperature changing. You might be getting cold, or you might be feeling the heat too. So just adjust, grab a blanket if you need to, shed a layer of clothing. Just take care of yourself. Yeah. And know that being here, listening to this episode, watching this episode, is you taking care of yourself. You processing those emotions. You building that relationship with yourself and your internal world. This is you taking care of yourself. So really good job honoring yourself for showing up. And maybe that's part of your inner dialogue at this moment. Something you could tell yourself, oh, I'm so grateful for you showing up. Good work. You got this. You know, really being that father figure to yourself. Telling yourself what you needed to hear from your father. That support, that love, that protection. We think about how the masculine protects us, provides for us. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And I'm gonna just put my tuning fork down and grab the 222 hertz fork. Yeah. Just really let the sound of the fork, find some gentleness, some peace. We call the 222 hertz fork the peacemaker. So I love bringing this one in for a little extra softening. You might start noticing your body starting to soften a bit. You might notice some room, some spaciousness, some openness in your body from that cathartic release. What does that openness and spaciousness in your body feel like? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. All right. Okay, back to the 174 hertz fork, and we'll start to finish up here. We're right along the edge of the body now. Yeah, that's it. So I want to speak to, just coming back to the advice or the things you can consider and stay curious about in relationship to your liver and the liver health. So I mentioned a lot already at the beginning of our session, and there's one other really important one that I found really helpful with my liver health, and it's beans. Yes, beans. So beans can be kind of controversial, especially with the autoimmune diets. If you have autoimmunity, you know it's not part of that diet. So I kind of had that thinking that beans were not good, and you hear a lot about beans creating gas. You know, there's that whole beans, the musical fruit. I won't sing the whole thing, but there's that whole belief. And so I've come to understand beans as having so much soluble fiber that it increases the bile acid. And bile acid is what helps bind all the waste in the hormones like a magnet and gets carried out of our body during a bowel movement, right? So if we don't have that bile acids, what happens is we don't have that whole process of removing toxins from our blood, and it gets recycled back into our bloodstream. So beans have the most soluble fiber in them than anything else. They're mostly soluble fiber, and they're delicious, right? So good. There's so many different ways you can prepare them, and you can put them on salads, you can put them in soups. So I eat them every day with every meal, and that's really been so helpful for my liver health. Okay, so beans, I bet you didn't expect that to be expressed in our session today. So as we start to close up here, I just invite you for the next minute I'll be quiet for about a minute, and I'll just let the fork do its thing. And I'm right in front of the liver, so we're just gonna let that coherence of the fork bring some soothing, some movement, some processing. Whatever your liver needs, we're just gonna let that fork bring that coherence to that liver. Okay, so I'll be quiet for about a minute, and in this minute, I really just encourage you to send some loving energy through your hands, through your self-talk. Okay, so I'm just going to drop in now to the solar plexus. This might take a minute as we integrate. There's quite a bit of integration here. There was a lot. A lot of us were never taught how to process, or we weren't allowed, I should say, to have emotions. So we never learned how to feel them, how to process them, how to allow them to move through us. So we stuff, we repress. And then the other big one was the fear related to our father's anger. That can be a big one. That can be really hard. Yeah, so we're just letting all of that integrate. It's going to be a moment here. I'm really feeling that density. We call this pulling taffy. And it's real hard to stretch that. So I know a lot of integration here happening. Yeah, and I never really know what's going to come up in each session. Kind of have an idea, have a guideline, a framework, and then just based on whoever is going to watch this video, listen to this podcast. It just depends on who's going to show up for it and what's in the field that wants to be harmonized. This is a big one today. That skill, that temper tantrum technique can be used again and again. Remembering at the end to always come back to compassion for yourself, honoring yourself in the process, sending yourself good energy and love and compassion. That's just as important as screaming into a pillow, banging your fist, stomping your feet, right? It's just as important to come back to your heart, yourself. And if any of you are feeling like you want a little extra support, there's more here that you want to explore. I'm always available for a virtual session. Find out that information, how to book that session below in the show notes. Also, make sure you subscribe to Somatic Self Healers. You can find that link as well, because I am offering, starting this month, a free monthly gathering, virtual of course, where you can ask questions, receive support, and we practice together, right? We practice release, discharge, we practice down regulating our nervous system. So make sure you sign up, Somatic Self Healers, the community. You can get that information. A little bit more at the top here, working through, almost there. That was it. All right. As usual, it's so delightful to have you here and to have you part of this community. And we'll see you next time. Have a beautiful day.